What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the shop. Been a while since I made a video. I really wish I would have filmed putting the rest of this thing together, or the work I did. It's not done yet, but this is my supercharged Iron Duke motor in here, and I got this thing all running, I should say. I was going to say all done, but I got it running enough to where I was able to trailer it to the Simcoe Weekender and drive it around at the show. No seats, I was just sitting on the floor. It runs freaking awesome. I'm gonna have to get it out at some point here and fire it up for you guys. I did one previous video where I started it and ran it for about 30 seconds or whatever, just to make sure my intake worked with the supercharger and all that stuff. And it did run pretty good in that video, but if you go back and actually look at that, it was smoking pretty heavy out the pipe too, and I knew it was running rich. And right before the show, I basically got it done enough to where it could be driven. I got the rear brakes hooked up. I don't even have the front brakes on it yet. Just enough to move it in the show and park it there. And I got all that stuff done and decided to pull the bowl on the carburetor and just see what size jets were in it. Well, there were no jets in it. So that previous video I actually had of this motor running, it was basically running with no jets in it. Wide open fuel, 1/4 inch holes. So threw a set of jets in it and it runs perfect. I didn't get to drive it yet. I might have to jet up or down a little bit after I get some drive time on it, but the thing runs awesome, 170 degrees, and from what I can tell, it seems like it's got quite a bit of power. Inside, I'm going to do all aluminum door panels. I got my aluminum sheeting here. I bought some new dimple dies. I'm going to do a bomber seat in here. I made a hood for it here with a cutout for the supercharger. Not sure if I really want to run that yet or not, but I have it. But anyway, I'm going to do aluminum door panels and a bomber seat in here. I ordered, geez, I think a thousand copper, solid copper rivets. I want to rivet it all together with copper rivets. I blacked the thing out right now with a rust inhibitor. Future plans are probably going to be, I think I'm just going to do the old spray paint, sand it down patina job on this thing. Got my taillights in and hooked up. The bottom hole is actually a taillight too. I was going through some farmer's scrap pile one time and there was an old fencer there for the electric fence for the cattle, and I'm talking probably 40s or 50s, and it had a really nice glass lens that looks similar to these, a little more flat, and it says Prime across the front, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to put that in that one, and that'll be a third brake and running light. So when I get my rivets in and stuff, I'll probably start on the bomber seats for that one, shoot some video on that. So back into the shop, the Datsun's still here. I'm waiting to put the cage in on that, and I was waiting on a few other parts for the front end. I need the filler panels for by the hood here, so I can get this stuff all gapped out and buttoned up on there. And he actually ordered the wheels for this thing too, so as soon as those come in and I get the front end set, I can do my inner wheel wells. I'm going to do them all out of steel, you know, all the way around. Get the cage in, finish the floor off on that, mount the seats, and that one should be pretty much ready to go to paint. The other day I just did this, I shouldn't say the other day, yesterday I just finished up with this 39 Chevy. Put another vintage air kit inside this one. It's my third install this year in the vintage air. They're pretty slick kits. Usually takes about like 3 days if you want to do it right, about a good 3 days to put them in. The brackets are never really right. There's some modification on the compressor bracket down at the bottom because he was running a short pump, which was no big deal. It would have fit perfect if it was a long pump, and then you got to usually build an alternator bracket, especially on a car like this where you don't have room off to the side for the alternator, so it's up over there back in the dark. But that went pretty smooth. I've got all the tools and stuff to do those now, so maybe one of these days I'll shoot installing a vintage air kit if I get another one. Oh, over the summer, I guess on the 50 over here, it's getting closer. The front end's all patched up, mounted. Seat riser is in it, and I built this box from scratch, which I have a video on that too. Made everything here basically from sheet metal and roll bar pipe on the top. I'll put up a video of that later. But a month or two ago, I started building parts, or started getting ready parts for my twin Eaton 90s. I slapped on the intake. I was looking for some pulleys and found a couple, and last night I just got done cleaning the shop up after working on the 39, and decided to drill and tap all my holes in my blower plate up here. So they are all drilled and tapped to 5/16. Kind of mocked it up a little bit. I had to make an aluminum spacer here. These are two separate pulleys, and the serpentine belt pulley really, I couldn't find a pulley for the back to drive my alternator where the serpentine pulley would fit inside. I know like B&M systems and stuff, they have a custom smaller pulley, usually aluminum, that would fit in there. It's got a narrower neck to fit inside this pulley. But I just used a stock one, buttered it up to the front, and I made an aluminum spacer in here on the lathe with a neck coming forward to engage the hole. You can't see it now because I got the washer on. I ground, if you mess with a small block Chevy pulley, on the bottom pulley there's that lip that comes off that goes into the balancer. I had to grind it off the front pulley here because we're butting up to that plate. So what I did was, when I ground it off, I milled a lip on the aluminum spacer that engages this pulley for centering, and then on the back of it I milled that aluminum spacer to fit inside the lip that was on this pulley and engaged the whole thing in. So we're all centered there. Like I said, my plate is ready here, and now I'm going to start building everything to connect this stuff to this intake. Alright, so I chose this intake out of the attic because it was just an old pile of junk that I used to run on my Lumina. At one point in time I remember trying to pull the plug out, or the water spigot out over here, and the whole side of the intake cracked off. And it was also before I had a TIG welder, so that's just a bunch of spool gun mess on top of it. Kind of unsightly. And I really never cared for these mounting flanges for the carb being all skinny like this. I prefer an intake with a good, 3/4 inch band all the way around it for sealing. So I decided to use this one because now what I can do is, I really don't care about it. It's basically junk anyway. So when I do my bottom plate here, I'm just going to put it on, cut it a little bigger, and I'm going to weld that sucker all the way around here to tie it in good and strong. No leaks that way. I'll probably have to put a couple risers off that plate down for support because there's quite a bit of weight on those two superchargers, and I don't even have the carburetor or intake section built either yet. So first things first, I measured up, and all I needed was really one measurement from the front post here. My openings on the bottom of the blower plate are 2.5 inches forward from it and 1.5 inches back. That's a 4-inch by 4-inch hole for where the superchargers blow through. So I'm going to make myself a template of the intake so I can get my bolt pattern and my hole here, and then I'm going to transfer it over to some 1/2 inch aluminum and cut that stuff out and get it. I'll probably bolt it on here for now just to keep it centered and straight, but like I said, I think after that I'm just going to pull the bolts. I'll weld it on here, pull the bolts, and maybe just plug weld them, and the bottom section of this will be all on the intake. The top plate, I'm going to drill a series of holes in it, and once I get up to where I need to be here with basically my intake or my funnel coming in, I'm going to put a flange around the top of that, pull the blowers off, drill them, countersink them, use countersunk bolts to go down and engage the lip on the bottom section, and then the top plate will be removable if you want. But I really don't see a reason to have the bottom removable. I really don't care. You should be able to get in here to do everything, tighten the bolts and whatnot. There's plenty of room, and with a 3-inch rise in here, there's plenty of room to pull the valve covers, even with tall valve covers, for making push rod adjustments or anything like that underneath. So first things first, I'm going to make a template here and we'll get it transferred into some aluminum. Alright, so first I'm just going to get my bolt pattern and stuff in my hole opening. I really don't need to be precise on this one because I'm going to transfer it back out to a different piece of paper that's going to be nice and square that I can use for my measurements for my funnel so the top plate stays square. So really I'm just going to push down on it, trace out my pattern, and then obviously the bolt holes here are squared with the intake. So I will just basically use the center line of those bolt holes to get my my squareness on the edge of my plate. So hold her down and find my pattern. There it is. Alright, first things first, I'm going to knock my holes out on here for my bolt pattern, 5/16. Alright, so if you look now, I have the inside cut out here. Now this is the exact size of the intake, meaning that is the exact size of this outer lip in here. When I cut my plate, I actually want to be a little bit bigger, so it actually sits a little further out so I can shoot that with a weld all the way around. Have a nice, corner to be able to weld it together. So instead of trying to do this by hand, which I would have years ago, I'm going to go back to the plasma table. And I do believe I have a square plate quick program in there where I can radius the corners and probably duplicate this on the machine, which would save a lot of time instead of trying to carve that aluminum out. So we'll go fire that up and see if I can find the program for that. Alright, so there is a program in here for a square hole radius corners. I measure that out and I'm pretty much 3 3/4 by 3 3/4 with roughly a 3/4, 5/8 to 3/4 radius on the corners. So I actually went a little bigger on my size. Like I said, the whole opening is 3 3/4. I went 3/8, and then we're going to try a 5/8 radius for right now. So I am going to run the part, which I already did. Switch hands, and that's what we're gonna do. I got a piece of rusty scrap metal over there. We're gonna burn a test one out first and go see how it fits on the intake. I guess we gotta turn the air compressor on. Alright, we'll try this again with air in the compressor this time. Alright, so there's our test hole. I'm going to run over to the shear over here and just cut this off so it's smaller and easier to handle and go see how it fits on the intake. I'd have to say that's pretty much perfect. Nice amount of room there to put a nice bead in with the TIG. That's it. Awesome. So now I'm going to transfer another one of these holes into this aluminum plate and go from there. Alright, so here we go. I haven't really cut any really thick aluminum like this. I tried once and it kind of totally screwed it up, but I think I got it set pretty good. I got a long pierce delay for when it fires the torch, and I got my feed rate dropped down to 10 inches per minute, which I can bump up a little if it's cutting too slow, if it starts working out. So I'm going to hit the go button and see what happens. That was a fail. Alright, so it never pierced on that last round. I brought it back to my starting point of where the circle should be. I'm going to try it one more time with a higher pierce. So the aluminum, what happened was the aluminum spattered up and covered the tip and screwed everything up. So when it took off to move, it was basically walking all over the place because there was a big glob of aluminum on the end, and it also didn't pierce all the way through this plate. So I'm going to increase my my pierce time and my pierce height. I'm going to try this one more time. If it doesn't work, it's going to be a grinder and a Dremel to make that hole. Alright, so I have this thing jacked right up. pretty much full power to cut this aluminum. I want a nice clean cut, and I really don't mind about the tip per se, as long as I can get this one hole cut. But yeah, this is what happened to the first tip. That aluminum spattered up and blew the end right out of her. So one more time with a brand new tip. Let's see if we can screw up another $30 bucks here, or if it's gonna work. All right. Little spitting in the beginning over there, probably because it screwed it up the first time, but actually that piece looks like it's loose. Well, it seems like it worked. Yeah, that's not too bad. Clean it up with the grinder, and that's going to be a great base plate. Pretty good cut. I'm just going to go in there with a Dremel after I do my bolt pattern and stuff and cut this smaller to the size I want. I'll chuck it up in the vise and just chase all this stuff with the Dremel, get it nice and smooth, cleaned up for welding, and that'll work. Because this hole is a little bigger for welding purposes, I am going to drop the paper underneath first, center it out by eye, and then just trace that out so I can cut my pattern a little bigger to line up with this hole a little better. That's how much bigger we are than the stock hole in the intake. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, now that I got my hole the same size as the hole in the plate, I'm going to line that up, and I'm just going to mark one face hole, because I don't quite know, the plate could have been on the plasma table a little crooked. I want to make sure these two bolt holes are exactly the same distance from this edge. This is going to be the front edge of my bottom plate, and I want that to be 100% square with the bolt patterns on the intake. That way, once it's bolted on, I can use that as a straight edge to start coming up with my other pieces to the bottom of the blower plate and keep everything square and true. So I'm going to mark that one hole, find a measurement, probably erase the hole, wipe it off, scribe a line at that point, run that line through the center of my front two holes. That way I know when this goes on, this edge will be 100% square. So I got my holes put in. Now I'm just going to measure my distance from this set of bolt holes to the outside. Do the same over here, and I want to cut that plate off the same distance and make this thing square. It actually won't be square, it's a little skinnier than it is longer, but square it out anyway. I could cut this on the plasma table, but I don't think I'm going to risk it. I want it exactly perfectly square. Leaving an edge like this, you're going to have to grind it, and that's going to throw things a little out of whack. So I can't put it in my shear, it's too thick, so the only choice is cut off wheel. I don't have a bandsaw, a vertical anyway. So cut off wheel time, make some dust. Alright, so I measured off the face of my crankshaft with my level to each side. I'm exactly 11 and 15/16 from the plate to the front, so it's all square on the top. I'm going to clean this thing up just a little bit more, get the TIG over here and start welding this piece right onto the intake. In the back, you'll notice there's a vacuum port right here, which is overlapped by the back of this plate a little. I don't really need all this material here. When I come up, my bottom half is actually going to be at an angle forward, and the front's going to be angled forward a little bit. So I'm going to have plenty of room here. I can either run my plate off the back edge and then notch it afterward and put a pipe through it, so I have some clearance for whatever, a boost gauge or whatever here. Or I can just cut a half circle here and move my plate inboard a little further towards the bolts. I'll probably end up doing the pipe thing and bringing my plate to the back edge just because it would look nicer on the back like that. So, but first things first, I'm going to clean this up a bit and then get welding it down to the intake. Well, I got that all put on now. Ran 3 passes all the way around it. The first pass I used filler, went around, attached the intake to the plate, did that once all the way around, wire wheeled it, came back and did a hot pass from the weld to the cast, and went all the way around, did that, cleaned it up again, and then I went back to the top, and you can see here I blended the top plate down into my weld, so it's on there. It's not coming off. I know it's not going to leak. So now I can move on to my next piece, which is probably going to be the front piece coming up forward to get in front of the holes in the top blower plate. The other thing I was thinking too is, earlier I was going to make the top blower plate removable. There's really no reason for it. I don't need to get in here to take the bottom off because the bottom's not removable. It's going to be up, well, this is ½ inch, so it's going to be up 2 3/8 from here yet. So I'm going to have, and this is actually going to come off to the outside too. So I'm going to have plenty of room to get in here to put the intake bolts in the center. I'm going to have plenty of room to basically do everything I need to do. So really, I'm just going to weld this thing all solid. The only thing I can't do is I'm probably going to weld the inside and outside of all the pieces coming up from here. I'm going to use 3/16 all the way around coming up to the blower plate. And on those, I would like to weld the inside and the outside on it. The only thing I can't do by making it all one unit is weld the bottom of the top blower plate, which is this piece of metal, but I really am not concerned about it. I'm just going to lay a nice pass around the bottom. Maybe I'll put 2 passes on it and attach basically this funnel looking thing to the bottom of that plate. So really, it's going to be a one-piece unit, and I'm going to move on and start making that part right now for the front. So I ran back to the shear and made my front plate like this. This one's going to go on the front here, on top of this plate. It has to lean forward exactly 1.5 inches from this lead edge. So I'm going to lean it on here, give it a few tacks, use the square to get it at exactly 1.5 inches, and then probably just make the side plates right away going back. Well, probably. I guess we'll have to see how it goes after that, because the back plate is also going to be leaning forward to catch the back of the blower plate. However, if you guys notice, this is actually angled forward on this intake, so my side plates, when I make them, are actually going to have to be trimmed down on the back side to make this level, basically with the valve covers, so the belts and everything line up good with my crank pulley. So I'm just going to get this one on here quick, make sure it's leaning forward 1.5 inches, do the math on the lean, on the tilt on it, make my side pieces, tack those on, and then do a little measuring for the back piece. I might have to take that plate off the Superchargers and see what that's going to be all about on the back. Actually, now that I think about it, my side plates are going to have to be angled forward a little bit too, so I'll probably just measure all that out and make it right away. It'd really be nice to weld all 4 of these sides on here and then just throw the plate on top, center it out, you know, square in front to back so the belt lines up, and just weld away on it and it's done. So I'll get this one on first and then we'll move to that other stuff. Alright, so for measuring the bottom plate on the Superchargers, I'm exactly 7/8 forward to the back of that plate, the actual back of it. I'm 7/8 farther forward than the rear of this plate. So I'll need to lean that in approximately 7/8 at the top. So just knowing that information, I can at least make my sides now, taper them 7/8 from the top to the bottom, and in theory that should work out. So I'm going to make my side plates right now, Get that bevel cut in them so they sit flat to the back, parallel with the valve covers. And then I'll tack on a back plate and we'll try out the blower plate and see how it all works out. Alright, so I have the front plate on. It is leaning forward exactly 1.5 inches, which is going to give me my 3/8 of clearance from the blower hole to the front of this plate. And now I made my side plate template. Matches up at the front, and if you look here, it's level with the valve cover all the way back. So when the superchargers sit on there, they will be level with the motor. So I need 2 of these, 1 for each side. I can tack them up and then worry about the back. And the back, I'm kind of thinking about coming just straight up, and then I'll have about a 1/2 inch gap there where I can just cut an additional plate and weld on over to the supercharger. I'm not sure yet. If I do angle it, I'll trim these off once they're tacked on here with the cutting wheel and call it good. Alright, I'm going to scratch that because I was going to run those plates, thinking about running the back plate up and then adding another plate on top to connect to the blower plate. I'm not going to do that. I know it's 7/8 farther forward than the back of this. I'm just going to trim 7/8 off the top of here, angle it down, and just go from there. It'll be close enough, and I'd rather have that back angled a little forward and be welded right to the plate than adding a whole nother top and welding all the way around all that junk too. So I'll go cut 2 of these after I take 7/8 off the top of the back down to nothing and get those tacked on and see what happens. Monday. Last time I was shooting here was Friday. I had a wedding to go to. Was gone for the weekend, so I'm back. I have a lot of other stuff here to be doing, but I'm going to finish tacking these 2 side plates on here for the bottom of this blower setup. I just got them cleaned up on the table, so I'll pop those 2 on. Maybe mark out the back and do that. I really don't want to keep going because I'll be doing this all day and not getting anything done that I'm supposed to be, but continue off where we left Friday. So at this point I got everything tacked up on the sides and all the pieces pretty much figured out. Looking from the side, it does look like I'm just a tiny bit high in the back, which I will correct that with a grinder once the back piece is welded on. It'd kind of be nice to come out, well, I'm not sure. It'd kind of be nice to flatten this out anyway, but then again, having the gap between this, because this comes up at this angle and the top plate's obviously going to sit on this corner, it might almost be nice to leave it like this, because then I can fill that gap, maybe put a root pass in it and then go around it again. But I am probably going to have to take a little bit off the back. I'm thinking probably, well, I could measure it. I guess that would make more sense, right? I am 2 1/4 in the front. Okay, well, I'm 2 1/4 in the back, so I guess that's right. Apparently that's perfectly level, which is good because that's what I want. So yeah, that'll actually work out really well. I can set the top plate on this corner, put a root pass in here, and then go all the way around it again, and that should be pretty darn strong. I'm probably also going to come off the front corners. We'll have to see how it looks once it's all together and where I have room, but I could, in theory, weld this to the runners yet for some additional strength and probably come off the front plate down. I should really clean that ugly old weld up and redo that too, but we'll come off with a gusset of some kind down to here. Maybe we'll do it on all 4 corners. I'm not sure yet. But now I'll move on, cut the back plate, get that welded up, and it's moving along pretty good. Well, the back plate is on now, tacked on anyway. The whole base is tacked up, pretty much strong enough to set the top on. I'm gonna go grab it, set it on here, and see what everything looks like, and decide if I'm ready to finish welding up this whole bottom or if I gotta make any adjustments. I still do have to come back here and notch out for this vacuum port and the intake runner, but we'll do that afterwards while I'm welding all this stuff up. I'm thinking even if I put a pipe sleeve in there, let me get this back off here. Even if I notch this out above and put a small piece of pipe in there, or just roll a piece of metal, I'm probably not going to be able to weld it on the bottom underneath anyway. So I'm probably going to have to weld that piece from the inside. So it'd be best to do that before I weld the top on, for sure. Otherwise I probably can't even get it done in the first place. I'd probably have to just put a pipe plug in there at that point, but we'll worry about that in a minute. I'm going to grab the top, set it on, and see what it looks like. Well, that's looking pretty good. Everything lined up nice. Got my holes covered where the air comes in. I got a nice place to weld. I got a nice gap in there so I can do a root pass and a final pass all the way around the top. I am kind of worried about strength, I guess. I mean, in theory that should be plenty strong, but there's a lot of force, especially with two of them on top. There is going to be a lot of force on all this. So like I said earlier, gusseting this is probably going to be a good idea. And I think what I'm going to do is take the time, notch out a plate, clean this glob off, like I said, notch out a plate that runs all the way around everything and touches as many points as I can get across the intake up, follow this, and then probably also come forward to the front of the bottom blower plate too. Basically a nice strong gusset in here that's going to follow everything all the way down to give this thing some extra support, especially on the front, because I got my snouts hanging so far off the front here in front of where the actual connection is to the intake right now. I mean, that's going to be a lot of force, so it would beseech me to put something from here down to give that a little extra support. But other than that, I think this thing's going to work killer. The back turned out really cool, really well anyway. I can get a nice weld across the back of here. It should work pretty good. So that's going to be about it for this time. I'm going to move on and get some other stuff done around here. Basically next in this project, I just got to finish welding all that stuff up, get the top on, we'll make those gussets, and then move on to making some sort of crazy intake to come off the back of both of these, come up, mount to these two top bolt holes, and probably a 4-barrel AFB or Edelbrock on top of it. Alright, so that's pretty much going to be it for this time. I got the foundation of everything laid out here for the twin superchargers. We got to make those other parts, you know, for gusseting and all that stuff, finish up some welding on the bottom, and then move on to the intake and all that stuff in the next video. So we got a good base set up here. I will get another video posted as soon as I get some more stuff done on this thing. Till next time.